Today on CityCast Chicago. Last week, most of us experienced that first taste of the dreaded winter polar vortex when temperatures dipped into the single digits with wind chills of up to -10 or down to -10, however you're supposed to say it. So whether you're an old hat at this or this your first December in the city, we've got the perfect winter survival guide for you because let's be real, it's just getting started, my friends. It's Monday, December 16th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. Susie An is editor of WBEZ's Curious City, which has been answering Chicagoans' questions about winter and pretty much everything else for more than a decade. Susie, welcome back to CityCast Chicago.
Thanks for having me.
Let's just start with the good stuff. What is your number one thing that you think every Chicagoan should know when it comes to winter preparedness or winter etiquette or just cold ass bitter winter in Chicago, period?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I feel like this is the most obvious thing. I feel like every Chicagoan says this, but layers. You got to layer up. It's the most important thing.
I've been trying to do better about layering, and that top layer being something that doesn't make the entire, like throw the entire point of layering off. Like usually I'll have like a nice long t-shirt, then a sweater, and then just like a jean jacket. And so like, yes, I'm layering, but then if that last one isn't like maybe a good coat or some good shoes, it can all be for nothing. And so I'm trying to do better.
That's right.
Here's a question that's going to be different for everybody. But Susie, what do you consider too cold? We know that when it gets below freezing, like the city opens up resources, warming centers. But for you, what is too cold for you?
If we're just talking about a temperature, I would say like anything below 18 is where it's too cold for me. But that wind is no joke. And so it could be like 35 degrees and you get hit with that wind. I just can't do that. It's just, it feels bitter and angry and miserable. So for me, it's really like whatever the wind is doing, that's when I can't do it.
Oh, no, that's a good number. I don't know if how closely I've thought about like at what point is it too bad? Because I have gone out. I went to a Bears game and like -10 a couple of years ago. And that's probably the worst it had ever felt outside of like a polar vortex. But I'm probably with you. When we're under 20 degrees and we start seeing like the age I was when I was at my clumsiness, like 13, 14, 15, like at that point, I'm checking out, probably staying in the house a little bit longer. We talked a little bit about like layering clothes, but like for you, and I know this could be different for everybody, but like, do you have a different moisturizing routine? Are you putting on more Vaseline on your lips, more daily moisturizer on your face, lotioning your hands more often? How are you doing that?
You just want to lotion up everywhere. I mean, you know, it just makes your life a little bit better and less miserable in the winter. And then I'm always taking like a little hand lotion or something with me on the go, as well as like, just a good and reliable chapstick too, because I dry out so bad in the winter.
When you're thinking about layering for outside, what are your favorite layers to put on that you can really only wear in the winter? Like, what is your go-to like super cold outside ensemble?
Oh, okay. So I will usually, it depends on what I'm going to be doing, but sometimes I will go with like triple socks. And that last sock is going to be like that's going to be like my thick wool sock. And then I always have like, like the long underwear underneath, as sort of like, that's what's really going to seal in the heat. Some people go a little too far with like multiple pants. I mean, I'll do like the tights and then like another pant or something like that. But I usually don't do anything beyond that. And then like long shirt, sweater, coat. But for me, like a good hat is so important. I really feel like a hat and a scarf that like is just like sealing everything off so that it just kind of keeps the heat in. That's what it gets it for me, is just like the hat and a good scarf.
Yeah, I bought like the same beanie in like 6 different colors a couple months ago, and I still been getting them off. And I really want like a big chunky scarf this year, and not just for the fashion of it. I want a practical big chunky scarf. What's the weirdest tip you've ever heard for people going outside into the cold?
I heard this tip about like people using plastic bags, like on their feet. So like they'll
Like inside of their shoes?
yeah.
Oh.
So they'll like have a sock and then like put like a plastic bag on underneath and then put it in their shoe. Um, I don't think I'm ever doing an activity where I need to do that, but I mean, that sounds like a good idea.
I've seen people throw the garbage bag on to go work out, but I have not seen the individual Ziplocs for the limbs just yet. What about if you're thinking about keeping your house warm? Because I'm at the point now where I'm starting to have to negotiate, like, how low or high do I keep my air on or my heat on throughout the night? I'm trying to balance that with, how much it's going to cost to keep this mug heated throughout the winter. So for you, what are some of your best tips for keeping the crib warm?
Yeah, I mean, I live in a very old Chicago home, so it is super drafty. It is not insulated. If you are in a place where you can insulate your home, do it. It'll bring your energy costs down a lot. But you might be in an apartment where you have no option to like do some sort of big upgrade. The plastic over the windows, it goes a long way. Getting some of that removable putty that you can kind of like fill in any gaps or holes, like the door snake that you can put at the bottom of the door to make sure you're not getting that cold air leaking in. It's just those things of like trying to seal off any openings that like some of that cold air can get in. And then also, I always suggest bake something, cook something, you're going to eat anyway. So maybe like warm up your house in that way while you're feeding yourself at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Don't just, if you can avoid it, just turn the stove on for heat, but like use it in the process.
Exactly.
Like use your oven instead of your microwave to warm up your food, which I'm not gonna lie, I love a good warming up something in the oven. I always feel just a little bit fancier.
Yeah, it's a little homier too.
Yeah,
yes.
A little bit more patient. Okay, what about your vehicle? Are you doing things different with what you're keeping in your car when it gets a little bit cold outside? Like, how are you approaching driving in the winter months?
Oh, yeah. So I learned the hard way last year when we dipped below zero last year. I was driving around and, I heard all the tips of like, make sure you're fueled up and that your tires are fully inflated. And I heard all that. And I'm like, yeah, that's important. And guess what? I popped a tire. It was not inflated enough. And I will say like that day was like a lot of people had car trouble that day. Mm-hmm. And the tow trucks took a long time to get to people because they were so in high demand because of like the cold weather and the car trouble that came along with it. So don't just listen to it, actually do it. Make sure you're fueled up. Make sure you've got your tires fully inflated, because when you are waiting out there for the tow truck to come, I mean, I got a little minor frostbite on my toes. It was so cold.
Oh, no.
I've recovered since, but it was definitely a lesson I learned. And then, of course, like I always make sure, you have all the things like the spare shovel in the back, have your window scraper. And then I haven't done this, but I feel like it is a good idea, like having like a little bag of kitty litter so that if you are stuck in a icy patch, that's going to help get you out of there.
Mm-hmm. And make sure you buy the correct de-icing windshield wiper fluid.
Ooh, yes, that's a good one. Otherwise, you're just going to like, I know some people have done this before when they try to, you're late in the morning and you think that like you could just use your fluid to like get going and then it just freezes on your windshield. Don't let that be you.
I mean, another hallmark of winter in Chicago is snow. Not as much in the recent years. I believe last year we had like 15 days of like really big measurable snow between December and April. But when we start thinking about snow removal, I'm particularly thinking about dibs here, shoveling your sidewalk. Can you remind people what dibs is for the people who might not be initiated, folks who might have moved to the city recently, or again, haven't seen it at its max in these last couple winters?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So dibs is sort of like this unofficial way of after you've shoveled out your parking spot, people will put some sort of inanimate object. Usually it's a folding chair. Folding chair is a classic Chicago dibs item. They put it in that spot and then they drive away. And then when they get home, it's to ensure that your spot, your clean spot that you work so hard to make is still there.
And I understand it on all sides, and which is why I typically remain neutral on it. Like if I see someone dibs items, I avoid them. It's because we already know how bad parking in the city is. And the thought that you are finna just keep a spot, an unoccupied spot, occupied with an orange cone or a dining room table or an Our Lady of Guadalupe, like kind of miniature life-size statue is like on its face absolutely infuriating. It just feels way too difficult to find parking in this city for people to be hoarding it throughout the day. However, given, like you said, the unofficial part of this, which is Chicago, one of Chicago's, I think, best unwritten rules is mind your business in a way that is, I think, a little bit different than other cities. We are a truly mind your business city. And if you see somebody went through the trouble of digging out their spot and putting something there, a part of me goes, well, I don't want to bring unnecessary business on me by removing this, putting my car here. And now I'm potentially involved in something that has a little bit more legs to it. And so yeah, I'm definitely at your own risk, similar to parking in the city, but I will just swallow the frustration and look for a different spot before I get out and throw something away. What does the law say about dibs versus how it actually works in practice?
Mm-hmm. Well, so the law says dibs is illegal. That is just objects in the public way. You know, that is illegal. You can't just, have some chairs, or you can't just, claim a spot. But, city officials will kind of turn away, they'll turn a blind eye. It also just depends on which city official you're talking to, right? But I have seen, like, in certain snowier winters, once we see a bit of the melt, I have seen Streets and Sand come through and they're going to chuck it away. And so they will finally do something about it, but they, the city will kind of like let dibs go on for a little bit.
I am of the mind, I will say, if it is not a snowy day that folks are routinely having to dig out of, I don't think you just get to use dibs any day during the winter. Or like I remember that first day a couple of weeks ago when it snowed, like if somebody was trying to do dibs on that day, I'm like, you out of your mind. You're like, this shit is going to be melted tomorrow. But the kind of snow where it's like, Streets and Sands have gone through and just piled all of the snow onto the right or left side of the street, onto cars or into parking spots, I start to get a little bit more forgiving. But people who out here just like, oh, it's winter time, so now dibs is activated. No, I think it is a worst case scenario, blizzard over 5-6 inches of snow, took you 15 minutes to get out. Break glass in case of emergencies type situation. And even then, if somebody move your stuff, I understand how it goes. Similarly, what is the law saying about shoveling your sidewalk? Is there a culture of sharing in Chicago? People just do it for each other? Or is it more like I'm going to do my side, you going to do yours, and then the city going to do whatever the hell they going to do?
Well, so the law says you must shovel the sidewalk. That's for residents, that's for businesses. And if you don't do it, you could be fined somewhere between $50 to $500. The upper fines are more for businesses, but I, as a resident, I don't know. I've seen plenty of people who don't really get around to shoveling the sidewalk, and I haven't seen them be fined. So I think it's really something that a neighbor is calling the city on you about. But I think generally, and I've seen this in a lot of neighborhoods where people usually try to help out. And then you've got like organizations, especially youth organizations, that will kind of come around. They know like, okay, there's a decent amount of older people who live on this block. They'll come and help. And then for me, on my block, on a really, really bad snowy day, I know that we've got one neighbor who's got a mega snowblower, and he will do the entire block. Which I'm like, bless him. If you're doing that 6 a.m, I don't care. You're doing it for all of us. So go ahead and wake me up with that snowblower. I appreciate you.
I can't remember outside of like for my mom, the last time, because I live in apartments, the last time I've had to shovel snow. It's been a few years, but when I was in South Shore, there were a few older people on our block, and you would just see people like leaving a garbage can with like a shovel, like right outside their gate. And it was almost like a come and take one if you're going to like help your neighbors or if you want to participate. Like, do you have to shovel in and around your house?
I do. And then so I'll usually, sometimes I'll get a little bit of my neighbors on either side and they'll do the same. So like, it's one of these things where it's, I feel like for all my neighbors, we're always like, all right, who's going to get out there first? So it's like, just like a nice culture of like, we're going to help each other out.
I talked to somebody after we had that first snow a couple of weeks ago who was pissed because she went out and she shoveled and then it melted the next day.
Yes.
When it comes to shoveling, like, what is your tactic? Do you rely on like weather services to tell you if it's going to stick around? Do you give it a day or two? Or like when it hits the ground, you and your neighbors the clock goes off of who's out there first?
I mean, for me, I'm like, I do rely on the weather service to see like, because if you start too soon, you're going to be back out there again. Mm-hmm. And for me, like, I'm just going to wait for it to stop and then I'll go out there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, speaking of salt, along with shoveling and plowing, salt is another one of those ubiquitous Chicago winter experiences. The amount of shoes, boots that I've ruined either kicking up salt or getting hit by salt as the city moves through. Streets and Sand says they use something like 320,000 tons of salt each winter. Do we have a sense of like the impact it has on our ecosystem beyond just like Kobe's outfits?
Well, from what I understand, a lot of that salt runoff, it goes into Chicago sewers. It ends up in the city's wastewater. It gets transferred over into the sanitary and ship canal. So it doesn't, most of it does not get into our drinking supply, but instead it kind of gets shipped out away from us. So that might end up like impacting, some of the water reservoirs along the way. But it makes a pretty long journey where it's not just our water, but other municipalities that all end up like going from the Mississippi out into the Gulf, and that ends up having like a dead zone in the Gulf. So it does have a pretty big impact. Unfortunately, I guess fortunately for us, we don't see a lot of it, but we're also kind of part of the problem with all of that.
Got it. I think during this time of the year, beyond it just being cold outside, I think one of the things that keeps me from wanting to go out to places that I would typically go out to, maybe bars, lounges, like places to just like hang out, is floors are increasingly nasty during this time. We think about the salt runoff, the snow, the rain, just what people are bringing in. When you think about just inside of your own home, how do you prioritize keeping your floors, keeping your home as unimpacted by the muddy, snowy messes that we are sort of trekking through?
Well, for me, right before I go in the house, I will click my heels, jump up and click my heels, try to get as much off. And then when I get in, like, I'm immediately going to take off my shoes and put them in that little tray, like specifically a winter tray for the shoes that like, that's when all the salt and gross stuff can melt off, and then you'll end up having to empty that out eventually, but at least your floors won't be as impacted. And then I feel like That's like a new spot for my Swiffer. I just keep a Swiffer over by the door during the winter time. And then anyone who's going to come over, I'm like, why are you even asking me if you should leave your shoes on or off? Like, obviously, you should take them off. They're disgusting.
Don't bring nice shoes over. It's funny. I had this moment over the holiday break, Thanksgiving, where it was like, I'm going to my mom's. She's all shoes off at the door. When to Taylor's parents' house, their shoes off the door. We're shoes off at the door. It's in some ways it's helping me to have one less thing to think about. But I've had to add a new mat. Definitely getting a tray. My mom is really nice. She has she has three things. One, if you aren't going to take your shoes off, she has that little thing you can step in and it'll immediately wrap your shoe in plastic.
Ooh.
I know during the sloshy months, she's probably going to be like, no, just all shoes off. But she does provide multicolored socks for people.
That's so cute.
That you can put on to wear through the house that have like little grippers on the bottom. And so if you're thinking about being hospitable to the people who are coming to your home who may not realize that the socks they wore are going to be on being presented to everyone, or maybe they don't have socks, maybe think of adding that to your entryway, a little bowl of a multi-purpose socks for people.
That's great.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
Maybe a little holiday sock, maybe something themed. Honestly, the most important thing when it comes to winter, beyond how we manage the outdoors, manage the elements, is probably also how we manage our mental health, right? These days are cold, they are dark, they are long, and they can get real rough. What's one way you try to keep your spirits up in the winter?
Weekly, I am very intentional about having like at least one thing I could really look forward to. Because, yeah, like the Chicago winters, like you think like, okay, we're in March, it's going to be over. And it's not going to be over for like another 2 months or something like that. So like having that weekly thing that you can look forward to. I mean, it could be something as small as just like a good meal or like a new TV show or something like that goes a long way, knowing like, okay, I've got this little treat coming up. I've got another treat coming up the following week. Like that's what really gets me through.
So for you, what is the thing you are most looking forward to eating this winter? I'm going to hit you with a couple of rapid fire winter questions.
Oh, I love a good stew, like just a good beef stew.
What's the sweater, hoodie, layer that's going to get the most use from you over the next few months?
Ooh, I've just got a nice like wool sweater that works in looking nice, but also just hanging out too. That's it for me.
Your favorite Chicago winter activity could be holiday themed, could be sledding themed, could be anything.
Ooh, probably sledding. Yeah, like if the conditions are right, sledding with the kids.
And then last, what is the most interesting winter related question you've ever tackled at Curious City?
Ooh. Well, that's a good question. You know what? I am gonna go with one that we did last winter, and it's about falling ice in Chicago. So you see those signs downtown that says "Watch for falling ice."
Yeah, because we got some buildings that like an icicle can catch the momentum off those slopes and really jump off onto the sidewalk.
They are dangerous. So I'm just tell folks like, yeah, they are dangerous, and they have killed people before. So be careful. And I mean, like I think buildings now, they some are built in a way where like there are sort of like these de-icers that will try to melt significant chunks before they fall off. So there's that, but kind of like buildings don't really need to do that much, I guess, in terms of safety, but they put these signs out in a way to like not hold them liable. So if you're walking around downtown, you see those signs. If there's like an inner way to walk, like, walk in the building and come out the other side, I would suggest doing that.
Oh my God. I feel like now I got to grab a hard hat in addition to a winter coat. I've seen the signs, but I did not know, beyond injuring people, I didn't know that they have actually killed people. That is, oh man, we had a lot of like joyous questions towards the end.
Sorry, I brought it down.
That was the one that turned it. Oh, I did want to know. You talked about loving sledding. What's a great place to sled in the area? The Chicagoland isn't necessarily known for its, hills.
Oh, that's right. So they're out around like Evanston, Skokie, there's a place that they call Mount Trashmore. I think it used to be an old landfill. That's a fun spot. My parents live out in Northbrook, and so there's like a sledding hill that's helped that way. That's they've got stairs on either side, so it's like meant for sledding, so you can go up the stairs. And then if something in the city, Gompers Park has a pretty decent sledding hill, and then I've seen kids in the around in the museum campus.
Okay.
Kind of close to Soldier Field. There's a little bit of a sledding hill over there too. Haven't tried that one out, but it looked fun.
I want to know from people listening, 773-780-0246. If there's a place where you like to sled in or around the city, please let us know. Susie, was there any other winter tips you wanted to give people before we let you go?
Just remember, winter will be over. It has to end at some point.
Susie An is an editor with WBEZ's Curious City. We appreciate you making time for the podcast.
Thanks so much.
Real quick, from me and the entire team over here, we just want to thank y'all once again for listening. Special shout out to our CityCast Chicago members, our new members who joined this past week, people who have joined over the year. I know we kept bringing up this campaign all last week. Some of y'all might have hit the little 10-second jump. But for real, so many of y'all showed up for us. You showed out. We see you. We read your comments. We appreciate you. If you couldn't become a member last week, don't worry, you can still do it. It's not too late. Visit membership.citycast.fm. Whether you do or don't become a member last week, next week, 2025, you still got some other opportunities to support this podcast, support this newsletter. One way, you can vote CityCast Chicago as best podcast and Hey Chicago as best email newsletter for the Chicago Readers Best of 2024. You can find it under the City Life category. You can also visit our website, chicago.citycast.fm, and please take advantage of all of the things on our website. Of course, I can't let you go without some good news. Tomorrow, some of Chicago's most notable venues are coming together for Chicago Appreciation Night at Empty Bottle. It starts at 8 p.m. It's a free event. All you got to do is RSVP. Check the link in our show notes. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Peace. And of course, one last thing. Some good. Ooh, that was terrible. I don't know if I got it this week.